What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast where we have a trade to announce. Dryden Hunt of the Colorado Avalanche is now a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Dennis Malgin is a member of the Colorado Avalanche. He was playing with Toronto Maple Leafs. So, this was a trade that happened this afternoon. Honestly, not a major blockbuster deal. Um, in just a bunch of fourth line players, in my opinion, guys that could be healthy scratches, depending who is in and out of the lineup due to injuries or due to who's playing good and who's not. It's not a trade that really makes any team significantly better, but in my opinion, I do believe that it's somewhat of a fair deal. Luca, what are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, well, I think it makes sense for kind of both teams. I think the Leafs, they had Dennis Malgin in their system for a long time, and he's a guy that came in from the Florida Panthers a couple of years ago in 1920. Played for the Leafs, and there was an expectation for this guy that he was going to come in and be a big player for the Leafs. He had some really good stats in the Swiss league, and I think the Leaf fans and the Leafs in general had a big expectation for him coming into the league, and I just don't think that he's lived up to that potential in Toronto. They expected him to be more of an offensive dynamic forward. He's got 4 points in 22 games this season, and he's played on, lines with William Nylander and John Tavares this season at times too. So I think this is a move that I think, Dennis Mulligan just wasn't happy with the way he was playing in Toronto. And I think Kyle Dubas decided, you know what, I think it's time for him to potentially get moved somewhere else. In terms of Dryden Hunt, I mean, listen, this is a guy that's not really an offensive dynamo. In 21-22, he had 17 points with the Rangers. This season in 3 games, had 1 goal, was placed on waivers, claimed by the Avalanche, and then played 25 games with the Avalanche, scored a goal. This is a guy that's a pure defensive forward. He's a guy that's going to be really good on in his own end. He's a good fourth line forward that plays a really good defensive game, can kill penalties, can play those minutes on the fourth line. But he's not a guy that's going to play more than 10, 12 minutes a night. He's really a guy that's going to be on that fourth line to help the Leafs keep a lead or potentially play some defense. So I think it's a good move for both teams. I think the Leafs wanted more of a Zach Aston Reese type of player, and they get that in Dryden Hunt. And I think the Avalanche, they want some more scoring. I think they get a better offensive player in Dennis Mulligan, a guy who, with the right players and with the right system, can potentially score 10, 15 goals this season. So I think it's a good move for both teams. I don't really think there's much to deliberate here. But I think it works out for both teams, especially where they're at kind
Yeah.
of right now this season.
And just looking at, in terms of their contracts and the cap hit, relatively, the same amount, around
Yeah,
750K each. So it doesn't really hurt the bank in terms of it's not a cap dump. It's none of those
no,
type of deals. It's just a body for a body. It's trying to trade for needs essentially. And like you're saying, Malgin, wasn't working out in the Toronto organization, and it's time for a change of scenery. And they get more of a physical guy in Drayden Hunt, and honestly, there's not really much to deduct here, but let's just take a little look at Dennis Malgin's stats. In 259 it's in 215 games, 30 goals and 34 assists for a total of 64 points. Not bad for a 25-year-old. Drafted in the fourth round by Florida in 2015. Played in the Swiss league, played in NHL, AHL level. So, he's a capable NHL player. He's a guy that's going to be playing fourth line minutes, nothing, bigger than that with the Colorado Avalanche. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries. They've been looking for a center. They've been tied to guys like Jonathan Taves, Bo Horvat. So, Dennis Malgin does make sense in terms of needs. In terms of Jaden Hunt, he's a left winger, 27 years old. Looking at his stats in 193 games, 14 goals and 28 assists, for a total of 42 points. Played mostly at the NHL level, a couple seasons in the AHL level. Um, Seems to be that as he was never drafted. And in terms of lineups, as we were saying before, since Jaden Hunt is a left winger, probably going to find himself on the fourth line when there's injuries or maybe a player's coming out of the lineup due to poor
yeah,
performances. And then in terms of Colorado, as you see, they're not really deep in terms of their center position. So they bring in Malgin, who could potentially be playing fourth line minutes as a center. Maybe they try him out as a wing. We'll
I
see
think
what
I
happens.
think he likely plays as a winger. He's primarily a winger compared to a center. He's played a little bit of center in his career, but he hasn't, really developed into an NHL center. I think with Colorado, though, one of the biggest things that we need to kind of notice is that if you look at their team, right, they're struggling with a lot of injuries, kind of like you said. This is an opportunity for a guy like Dennis Malgin to take his opportunity in Colorado and potentially ride with it. And we all know, what Colorado's been able to do with a lot of guys that they've brought in. They've been able to turn them around and become really good players. Valerie Nichushkin's a guy that's come to mind as a guy who's really turned his career around. But I think as a third line player, potentially with Nigel Cogliano on his wing, that could be something to look at for Dennis Mulligan. Maybe playing second line power play unit. Maybe they give him a shot in the top six as well, just to see what he can do over there. But Colorado's got nothing to lose in this deal, and neither do the Leafs. It's a good hockey trade for both teams. It's some depth, and I think it's depth that
Yeah.
two teams that are battling for playoff spots and are doing well in their respective divisions. I think it goes a long way, especially for the playoffs. And we all know, Colorado right now are struggling with the injuries, but when they get McKinnon and Landeskog back, it's gonna be another offensive dynamo for them. So I think having Dennis Malgin as a depth guy could help. He's a guy that has struggled to finish his chances, kind of like Jay Fresh says. And like I said, he's a very good offensive forward. He's pretty good defensively as well. But he's a guy that I think he lacks the finish. He's a little bit of a guy that needs to learn to bury his chances. And that's why I think he's got more offensive upside compared to Dryden Hunt, just because he puts himself in the position to score. But sometimes he hits the post, or it doesn't always go in, and he misses the clear cut opportunity. So I think with Colorado, if he can find that confidence a little bit more, get himself, to bury those chances, he's a guy, like I said before, that can get 10, 15 goals this season for sure and be a pretty good player for Colorado. So,
Yeah, Morgan has that potential to, generate, offense because, of his ceiling. He's a higher ceiling. He's more of an offensively minded player, and he's going to be
yeah,
given the opportunity, like you were saying. In terms of Hunt, Hunt is more of a traditional fourth liner.
yeah,
He's more of a physical type. He's more of an energy guy. So, maybe even a fighter, some may say. So, like you were saying, it's a change of scenery for both players, mostly for Dennis Malgin. If we have to go based off what the upside, I think there's a higher ceiling and more potential in terms of what to expect for Dennis Malgin. But in terms of what Toronto wanted to get, they wanted to bolster up their fourth line and get a little bit more physical since there's been a lot of complaints in recent years that they're not physical enough, and they keep on adding more guys like Hunt, more physicality, like Zach Ashton Reese is another
yeah.
example. And yeah, anyways, that's basically our trade destiny, our trade breakdown concerning the Dennis Malgin and Dryden Hunt deal. Make sure to write your thoughts in the comment section below. We'd like to hear from the Toronto Maple Leaf fans, Colorado fans, or anyone who just loves NHL trade breakdowns. We'll see you on the next episode of Young Guns Podcast. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you on the next episode.